iDubbbz went from YouTube's untouchable king of chaos to the face of a downfall nobody can stop watching. But this downfall isn't just about old jokes aging badly. It's about humiliation, public humiliation, Anisa, the backlash around Anisa, and the endless controversy that followed him for years. From Creator Clash to Creator Clash 2, the controversies keep stacking up. So what really broke iDubbbz? This is Internet Chaos Report. Remember to like and subscribe because we're posting 2 videos every single day. Now let's get into it.
Hello, I'm Venner, and welcome back to another overanalyzation. Back in the mid to late 2010s, iDubbbz was one of the most dominant figures on YouTube. His channel regularly pulled in millions of views.
Yeah, I used to like iDubbbz back like 2015, 2016. I thought his stuff was really good. You know, his content cops, even like the unboxing videos were funny. You know, he just said whatever fucking he felt like and didn't care. But now he's just like turned into a cuck. It's honestly gross.
His content helped define a culture of edgy humor, influencing many people, building his reputation as someone who was, in his own unique way, funny, confident, confrontational, and completely unapologetic. And whether you liked him or not, he carried himself with a level of authority that few creators on the platform could match. However, that was in the 2010s, and from his peak, iDubbbz has lost over 700,000 subscribers and counting. And now his channel trends downwards almost any time that you check on it, and looking him up in any capacity.
Yeah, I think that the last time he posted a video, it only got 125,000 views, which is like super low for him because he used to get millions, like millions of views, like 20 million views on a video and shit like that, you know?
Currently, you're not met with praise or admiration. You're met with a sea of videos dissecting his downfall along with the endless controversies that he's involved in, which makes you wonder, what actually happened here? How does someone with such a massive following, such cultural impact, near the top of the platform lose a near million subscribers and is commonly seen as what many would consider a lol cow? Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because that's exactly what I want to look at today. In order to do that, I want to ask 2 questions. 1, how did iDubbbz end up where he is today, with the onslaught of never-ending hate and controversy? And 2, why does he seem to just be okay with it all? To answer these questions, I'm gonna split.
It's because he fucking has some succubus around him all the time.
This video into 2 parts. In the first part, we'll examine why so many viewers feel a loss of respect, not just because of isolated scandals, but because of a deeper shift in status and perception. And in the second part, we'll look at iDubbbz himself and his behavior. Specifically, why he seems so unfazed by everything from the way that he's treated by loved ones to the backlash he continues to receive from viewers, and give an explanation for it. And just before we start, as always, don't worry if anything I mention here is new to you. I present the psychological concepts and more so the events as we go, under the assumption that you have a job or are otherwise not chronically online. With all of that said, let's get into it. With part 1, the factors that led to a loss of viewer respect and growing division. And what's a better way to start than with our first factor, which is one of the biggest reasons why I've seen people not like iDubbbz anymore? Humiliation. Specifically, perceived humiliation in the eyes of viewers, as it seems a focal reason that explains why viewers have lost respect for iDubbbz comes from him being humiliated. And when you break down where this perception comes from, one source stands above the rest. Now, I'm not going to name names or point fingers, but Anisa, iDubbbz's
Yeah, I was gonna say it's his fucking wife.
wife, seems to be the largest source of this humiliation, with the things that she does or says about him, some examples of which we will get into very shortly.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's actually cucked by her. Like she's fucking dudes on the side and he knows.
Over time, viewers have watched repeated instances when Anisa makes dismissive or degrading remarks towards iDubbbz, which creates a pattern of behavior that we can pick out. Now, how iDubbbz himself perceives this humility is besides the point currently, but we will come back to that later. What matters currently is how we, the viewer, perceive these comments, because ultimately, it's the audience's perception that determines how much respect a public figure is given. And when viewers see a creator's partner publicly targeting their status, competence, appearance, or masculinity, they don't interpret that as neutral, especially not when that same creator built his identity on dominance, confrontation, and social authority. For a lot of
Say nigga. That shit was funny.
His early career, iDubbbz set the tone. He was the one mocking others, not the other way around. So when that dynamic changes to the one being mocked, the contrast becomes glaring. And once that contrast is visible for us all to see, every example thereafter reinforces it. So with all of that in mind, let's actually take a look at some of these examples. And you can judge for yourself on whether or not these comments coming from his wife is something that is actually reputationally damaging, insulting, or degrading. Some examples include the following. While on a live stream saying that he shits himself,
I just want to ask him if you've always been shitting your pants.
No.
Because since I've known you, you've always had like IBS. You've always been shitting yourself.
What the fuck? Why would she do that on a live stream? Does she like get off on humiliating him or something? What the fuck?
Yeah, well.
calling his last name ugly.
Not that it matters, but the only reason why we changed or chose my name over his.
Oh, I did not know that they picked that he took her last name. What the fuck, dude? That's disgusting. Oh, that hurts. Dude. You should just kill yourself at that point. Yeah, like at that point, you like that's what you have to do. You have to kill yourself. Like, I don't know. That's fucked up, dude. Ugh.
Last name is because his last name is like just objectively ugly. It's just like an ugly
Bitch, fuck you. You're ugly.
last name. Like Washburn sounds horrendous.
Saying her children with him would be ugly,
What's her name? What's her last name?
and that's the reason why she doesn't want to have any with him.
Part of the reason why I don't want to have a child with you is because I'm terrified if we have a girl that she's gonna have all your masculine features.
What? Wouldn't that just be with every dude? Unless if you had like a super like feminine dude. The fuck is she talking about? That makes no sense. You're afraid that if you have a girl, it's gonna have all the father's masculine features. That what? No, that's not how it fucking works. Are you retarded? Holy shit. What?
Isn't that interesting? I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Combined with
yeah.
me, I think the combination would be bad for a woman.
No, I think you're tripping.
I don't know.
And directly after a
What the fuck is she talking about? Oh, to get all of his masculine. What?
boxing match that he lost, saying that he would have lost regardless if he had broken shins or not.
Let me just add, he still would have lost to Dr. Mike even if he could breathe and didn't have fractured shins.
There are also
Dude, that's fucked up. This actually hurts me to watch. Like, what the fuck?
some more debatable examples, one being him taking her last name, which I mean by itself is a break from tradition, but honestly it's far from egregious. And I mean they are
No, that is egregious. Dude, what the fuck is this a real picture? And he's holding a tranny flag? What the fuck is going on?
both fully grown adults. However, in the context of Anisa saying that his name is ugly, it comes across to many as reinforcing the perception that he accepts being belittled, not to mention insulting his family by extension of these comments. And these are only a handful of a very, very long list of things Anisa has said about iDubbbz. Individually, any one of these moments could be seen as a lapse in judgment, but collectively they form a pattern, one that us as viewers easily identify and don't really like to see. When a figure repeatedly appears to accept or participate in public humiliation without any pushback, it alters the audience's perception of their status. And when the person delivering that humiliation is his own wife, it shifts how viewers read the situation. Instead of someone who commanded respect like he used to, he starts to look passive and submissive. Here, it's less about the literal relationship between iDubbbz and Anisa, and more about the collapse of his status because of the kinds of things she keeps saying about him. But speaking of their relationship, there also seems to be a degree of contention around Anisa creating and posting OnlyFans content, which I haven't mentioned until now. And if you've been exposed to iDubbbz in the last few years, then you'll understand
Can I go now?
that this is where the idea that he's a cuck originates from. Now, I want to be clear here. I think that people are entitled to believe and do whatever they want to. If someone's an adult and they want to create that kind of content, that's their decision. It doesn't really
No, I think it should be illegal. But anyways.
affect me personally, so it doesn't particularly bother
It does. It fucks up society and then that affects you.
me. More than that, there exist public figures who have partners or are themselves engaging in OnlyFans or some other sex work and are respected. So sex work itself isn't necessarily the issue here.
Are you saying Tana Mojo is not respected? What the fuck are you talking about? She is not respected.
The issue is how this dynamic affects iDubbbz's public perception. Because the reality is, a portion of viewers are just uncomfortable when a creator or their partner is involved in OnlyFans or adjacent sexual content. Others are completely fine with it at the same time, but regardless of where someone falls on that spectrum, what matters is how iDubbbz engages with that divide. And there are several moments where they engage with it that either A, reinforces the humiliation narrative around himself, or B, openly antagonizes viewers who disagree with him. One example of point A here is Anisa posting pictures of her butthole on their wedding night, which to many people
On their wedding night? That's fucked up, dude. Why did he marry this whore?
came across as extremely poor and
She's not even like that hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could maybe give a pass if she was like really, really fucking hot. I mean, I wouldn't, but it would be more understandable. But she's not hot. So it's like, what the fuck, dude? Does she just give great blowjobs or something? I'm confused.
taste, largely because a wedding night is traditionally treated as a private and symbolic moment. Instead, it became another public moment tied to sexual content, which for quite a few viewers reinforced the perception that iDubbbz
Dude, they're Nazis. They're doing that. The white power symbol.
was comfortable being publicly embarrassed. And for an example of point B comes from an older video where iDubbbz discusses his views on sex work. In that video, he distances himself from portions of his own fan base, criticizing the way that some of them spoke out about Anisa and about sex workers more broadly. And to be clear again, iDubbbz is completely entitled to hold whatever view he wants about sex workers, as are you, which is where the structural issue comes in about how that was communicated. Because this is one of the first times we see iDubbbz do something that is extremely risky for a content creator, which is openly condemning parts of their own audience.
First of all, I'm not your fucking dad. Like, if you don't want to look up to me anymore, that's fine. I don't want you to look up to me. This is straight out of the playbook of the boomer who's decaying in his lazy boy.
When a creator frames alignment with them as conditional, where disagreement means you're morally wrong and no longer part of that community, it can create a sense of alienation among viewers. And when that sense of alignment disappears, disengagement, like we've seen, often follows.
When are you going to divorce Ian so he can go back to his old self? Hey, man, I'm sorry. He's forever my victim. It's never happening. And it's specifically because
Yeah, dude, she's a succubus.
I enjoy you guys having your childhood hero ripped away from you. Like, I get a lot of joy from your life being disrupted.
I love my girlfriend, and I'm totally fine with dudes jacking off to pictures of her on the internet.
In the
That's fucking weird.
same vein of humility, there was a lot of contention around iDubbbz with Max Mofo's wedding. Specifically, iDubbbz was invited to attend it and he declined, reason being that he had really important stuff.
Yeah, I talked to Max about the wedding situation. When he was first fucking sending out.
Dude, Max Mofo literally made iDubbbz famous. And then he doesn't go to his friend's wedding who made his career. That's fucked up.
Invites, I was like really uncertain of how that was going to work out because I had some kind of important plans here in the States, so.
When the reality was he couldn't go because Anisa was getting a back tattoo and they were scheduled.
She was getting a back tattoo and he couldn't go? Bro, I think he has to kill her. I think that that's the option. Someone has to kill Anisa. I'm kidding. Okay?
For the same day. And this is the second and last time that I'm explaining how weddings work in this video, which I don't think I need to do for most of you, but I will anyway. A wedding is traditionally a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and especially for a longtime friend and one who helped build iDubbbz's career at that, you'd be correct to safely assume that it's maybe slightly more important than a tattoo appointment, one that isn't even for iDubbbz.
She's literally full of tattoos, too. It's like, bro, you changed the tattoo appointment. What the fuck? He needs to hit his bitch, dude.
himself. This one is easier to pick apart because the reaction to this wasn't division among audiences, but a consensus that this prioritization was just a horrible decision. When somebody chooses an appointment that can be rescheduled or just not go to because it's not that comparably significant over such a big milestone for an important friend, it sends a not so subtle signal. That signal being that your friend is now nowhere near the top of their list of importance. And that hurts to see. Now maybe there's private factors that we don't know about, that's always a possibility, but basing this on what we know publicly, the reasoning presented was just that simple. I mean, when Joji was invited and can arrange concerts around this wedding, it shows how important it was. So I'm sure that a tattoo appointment that wasn't even for him could have waited. Moreover, when viewers have already noticed a shift in tone, identity, and allegiance, like we observed in our last section, moments like this tend to not just exist in isolation. They instead reinforce the growing narrative that iDubbbz is whipped by his wife, and that perception, fair or unfair, compounds the narrative that his status is declining. On to our next factor, and also a big one, is archetype collapse. At his peak, iDubbbz embodied a very specific archetype on YouTube. He was confrontational, culturally aggressive, and extremely comfortable putting others down publicly. This was especially true during his content cop era, where he positioned himself as someone who controlled the frame. He mocked people relentlessly, escalated conflict without hesitation, and dictated the tone of that interaction. Whether you agreed with him or not, that persona projected confidence and social authority, and it's a large part of why his content resonated with so many viewers, and in a literal sense, why we subscribed to it. Importantly, that archetype didn't rely solely on what he said in videos, it relied on the perception that he was someone who couldn't easily be undermined. And that's where a huge contrast begins to appear between the old and the current iDubbbz. Because currently, when viewers perceive iDubbbz as submissive or easily humiliated, it clashes directly with the archetype that he previously embodied. The same creator who built his reputation mocking others and asserting control now appears in the eyes of many viewers to be the one losing that control in his
The fuck is he crying about in that?
own relationship. So even
Honestly, dude, crying on stream or something is crazy. Dude, I just don't know how you do that. I'd be so fucking embarrassed if I cried on stream.
if his actual demeanor in his videos hasn't dramatically changed over the years, the context surrounding him definitely has. And once that surrounding narrative takes hold, the archetype he built his career on becomes harder to maintain. The same creator who once occupied the role of a confident aggressor in these conflicts, now is frequently framed by audiences as the exact opposite. And when that happens, the appeal of the original persona weakens quite significantly, because audiences didn't just subscribe to iDubbbz as a person, they subscribed to the role that he played, the confrontational critic who dismantled other creators and controlled the tone of the conversation. And when the core appeal of that identity begins to weaken, division among viewers grows. Few people interpret it as growth or maturity, while most others see it as the loss of the very qualities that made him compelling and interesting to watch in the first place. And finally, I'd be remiss to not mention our last major factor in the loss of respect towards iDubbbz, which is Creator Clash. For those of you who don't know, Creator Clash was an event organized by iDubbbz and Anisa where content creators were paired to box each other and raise money for charity. The first Creator Clash was a huge success, raising around $1.3 million for charity and faced comparably little controversy. However, Creator Clash 2 faced many problems. The biggest one being that it failed to raise any money for charity at all. iDubbbz claims that this loss
Was Creator Crash 2 the one where he wouldn't let Sam Hyde come, or was that one? I can't remember.
due to piracy and higher production costs. However, many viewers question.
I wonder if he's going to bring up the Sam Hyde documentary too, because that really did a number on iDubbbz too. You know, showing like, dude, fucking Sam Hyde destroyed iDubbbz in that. That shit was funny. If you ever want to, you should go watch the Sam Hyde iDubbbz documentary, because it's just so funny. Sam Hyde is trolling him the whole time. It's hilarious.
His budgeting decisions. One example allegedly is despite knowing they were already down by hundreds of thousands of dollars,
they were negative $500K before the event.
Yes. So going up to the event with the ticket sales and the PPV sales, when the event started, they knew they were down $500,000.
Yes.
non-essentials were still consciously paid for after the fact, such as flying out creators for free, booking hotels, and hosting elaborate parties for them. As another example, we know that one of the creators that was supposed to be featured, Cassidy,
Froggy Fresh and Money Maker Mike,
or Froggy Fresh, who by the way was kicked from the event, which is its own controversy, said that
yeah, wasn't he kicked from the event for associating with Sam Hyde also? I'm pretty sure that that's what it was. He was kicked from the event because he was associating with Sam Hyde.
But Anisa asked him to return the $15,000 he was given for boxing training. While kicking Cassidy and then asking for his $15,000 back is one thing, I'd also like to speculate for a second. Creator Clash 2 had 24 fighters total, and if we assume that every single fighter was given the same fund that Cassidy was, or at least close to it, then the cost of training alone reaches $360,000. And I'm not a financial advisor, but that doesn't seem particularly smart, and it's easy to see how decisions like this led to the event raising no money at all. While that figure that I mentioned applies to Cassidy's situation specifically, it does not confirm identical payouts across all fighters. At the same time, it does add broader discussions online questioning just how funds were allocated for Creator Clash 2, eroding trust in iDubbbz all the same. Furthermore, when Creator Clash 3 was announced and delayed by several months, another controversy sprung between Ethan Klein of H3H3 and iDubbbz. This sparked major negative publicity, and several participants of Creator Clash 3 withdrew because of it, with the event being later cancelled altogether. So, taken together with everything from this section, you can begin to understand just why iDubbbz has lost as much respect as he has. None of the things that we've talked about alone destroyed iDubbbz's reputation, but together they created a feedback loop. Each controversy reinforces the last, each factor deepens the divide, and each new event that comes up makes this situation progressively harder to escape. With every addition here, the number of viewers who are comfortable with all of these individual controversies becomes increasingly smaller. It almost feels like passing viewers through a series of filters, as in with every new controversy, fewer and fewer people make it through all of them, and what you're left with at the end is a proportionally smaller amount of viewers that agree with everything that iDubbbz has done and said. All of this to say that once that narrative sets in, that iDubbbz has lost the identity that made him popular in the first place, every new moment is scrutinized through that lens. At this current point, the damage to his reputation, trust, and respect isn't caused by a single controversy anymore. It's caused and sustained by the very narrative itself. So far we've only looked at the external side of this situation, the events, controversies, and dynamics that have caused viewers to lose respect for iDubbbz over time. But that only addresses half of how he ended up here. Now I want to look at the why. Because when you look at these controversies we talked about, one thing stands out almost immediately, and that's that iDubbbz rarely reacts to them in the way that most people would. Whether it's criticism, humiliation, or backlash from his own audience or wife, iDubbbz tends to respond with a kind of indifference, or at the very least a lack of defensiveness. So I want to answer why.
It's because the succubus has sucked away all of his masculine energy, dude. He's just like a shell of a person now.
Why does iDubbbz appear largely unfazed by things that would normally trigger a strong reaction from most other people? To answer that, it's actually not so complicated. And to do so, I want to look at just two psychological factors that help explain how iDubbbz processes these situations, and why they look odd to us. And the first of these two factors is desensitization and conditioning. Okay, I want you to just lock in and indulge me for just a second here, because when we want to try to explain why iDubbbz seems relatively comfortable with situations that viewers interpret as humiliating, well, we are talking about iDubbbz here. This is the same guy who used to do everything from casually using racist and homophobic slurs for shock value to shaving off most of his hair and attempting to eat a cake made out of it. If he wasn't already unusually tolerant of social discomfort, then years of performing this sort of shock humor, self-humiliation, and constantly being involved in controversy have likely desensitized him quite a bit. So when Anisa makes a humiliating or degrading remark about him to his face, it makes sense that this might not register the same way it would for the average person. While you and I interpret these sorts of comments as insulting or embarrassing, to iDubbbz, this is simply Tuesday. In other words, given the same negative stimulus, iDubbbz and the average person may interpret and respond to it very differently. But it doesn't stop there. Over the years, iDubbbz has
I don't think that that's what it is.
also being conditioned to associate humiliation with success rather than harm. Moments of controversy, discomfort, or shock weren't social threats in his career. They were actually often the exact things that made him and his content quite successful. Being the punching bag, escalating or finding humor in awkward or difficult situations, or leaning into controversy frequently generated views, attention, money, and relevance. Being that kind of guy was rewarded.
Yeah, but you can tell that he's uncomfortable when she makes those jokes. Like, I've seen clips of him, and he's, like, uncomfortable when she's making these jokes and talking shit about him, and he's not saying anything. It's not like he's sitting back all cool, like, fuck it, this doesn't bother me. You can tell when you look at him that it does bother him. So this isn't what's happening. What's happening is that he lost his man card, dude. Fucking his wife took his balls.
So when embarrassment or criticism becomes repeatedly monetized and normalized, your brain can start categorizing it very differently. Instead of interpreting that sort of stimulus as something to avoid, it becomes something familiar or even useful. Think of it like this. If you were shown a shock video 100 times and every time that you watched it you received, for example, $20, eventually the shock would stop being the dominant response. Your brain would begin associating the experience with reward instead. Psychologically, this is a form of positive reinforcement, otherwise referred to as operant conditioning. And if you replace watching the video with making it, the same outcome occurs. Over a long period of time, humiliation or backlash can be conditioned to feel much more neutral. What viewers interpret as degrading may simply register to iDubbbz as part of the same environment that he's been operating in for most of his online career. To summarize this section simply, the dynamic that we see now, which appears uncomfortable or humiliating to viewers, may feel completely routine to iDubbbz, because for years, situations that caused humility weren't social threats in his career. Not only has he likely become desensitized to humiliation through the nature of his content, but those same moments were often the very things that brought him attention, engagement, and success, conditioning him to interpret these negative stimuli as neutral or even positive. And for our last factor that helps explain iDubbbz's behavior is something that he actually admitted himself, which is an issue with emotional intelligence. In one of his videos posted in 2023 titled "I Miss the Old iDubbbz," he makes an interesting comment about empathy, which is that he only recently began to properly understand empathy in his early 30s, and has had problems with empathy his whole life.
Only in these past couple of years have I gained the ability empathy, and I'm very ashamed to admit that. It sounds really pathetic to say at the age of
How does it sound pathetic? What?
32, I've acquired empathy. You know, my empathy meter's only maybe like a quarter of the way filled up, potentially, but it's at least there.
And that's a very striking admission to me. And that's because empathy is one of the core components of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and interpret the emotional experiences of other people, and understand how your own actions affect them as well. When someone hasn't fully...
See, I think that you can still have empathy and not be a fucking cuck. What? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Empathize for yourself, too, a little bit, buddy.
Developed this kind of awareness, it can mean that person processes social situations differently than most people. And looking back at iDubbbz's earlier content, that possibility checks out, because to reiterate, much of his past humor revolved around shock, humiliation, and social discomfort, both directed at others and himself. Those dynamics were often played completely straight, with little to no visible concern for how they might land emotionally. Furthermore, while iDubbbz says that developing empathy now has led him to change for the better, in particular with his Content Cop series, there's a discrepancy, because in that same video we just talked about, while he distances himself from the Content Cop era, saying he regrets hurting other creators and that the content no longer represents who he is today, he returned to that same style of video, this time targeting Ethan Klein of H3H3, someone who was previously a friend, and one that he collaborated with more than a few times. That is to say, while preaching about how he's now more empathetic, his actions are showing us the exact opposite. That discrepancy creates a tension between the values he claims to have adopted and the actions he continues to take publicly. He presents his current behavior as the result of personal growth and reflection, yet he appears to repeat the same patterns he criticized in his past work. This suggests that, contrary to what he says, his emotional intelligence may not be as developed as he'd like to believe. And tying this in with our original point, it also helps to explain why iDubbbz appears relatively comfortable with many of the situations surrounding himself today. If someone processes social dynamics differently, the moments that viewers interpret as humiliating or damaging may simply not carry the same weight for him. As a result, the reactions audiences expect, defensiveness, frustration, or embarrassment, may actually never appear. So in my last two videos, which I suggest you check out, I ended with sections on future directions, as in what the future could look like for the people I discussed, and what they could do to improve their respective situations. And I had around 1,000 words in my script here for that too, but after rereading it and revising it, I realized something. That being that this section is kinda redundant for iDubbbz. Not to say that he's incapable of change, because he is. However, at this point, he's shown that he's repeatedly resistant to feedback and deeply committed to the path that he's already on. And since he doesn't seem to view humiliation, backlash, or status loss as a real problem, correcting those things is extremely unlikely. As we've said many times now, what many viewers see as humiliating or degrading, iDubbbz doesn't seem to mind and treats it as ordinary to him. He very tightly follows what he believes in, which in a way is kind of admirable, but more so leaves very little room for self-reflection or adaptation. Currently, it would take an even bigger shift to create meaningful change. change. Something big enough to get him to reassess the dynamics that we've talked about, and I just don't think that that's likely. If losing nearly 1 million subscribers, constant humiliation, and consistent backlash from your audience doesn't make you reassess, then I honestly don't know what will. I watched quite a few older and newer iDubbbz videos while making this one, and there were so many moments in his older content that made me burst out laughing. It had this edge and absurdism to it that was genuinely very entertaining, and I personally don't see that with his newer content. iDubbbz has the capacity to be hilarious, and for the combination of reasons that we've discussed, that version of him just doesn't seem to surface anymore. And that's really it. When you take all the reasons we've spoken about together and the consistency in how he handles all of it, it stops looking like a temporary phase or a series of isolated mistakes. It starts to look like a reoccurring and stable pattern of behavior, not one that's waiting to be corrected, but one that's functioning as intended. And if that's the case, then the trajectory that we're seeing right now isn't a deviation, rather, it's the outcome, and it seems like it'll stay that way. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am, but I have my doubts that iDubbbz will be changing any of this anytime soon. I'd like to express a big thank you.
I miss the old iDubbbz. I wish he just broke up with his wife or divorced his wife. I mean, I'm not a fan of divorce, but that bitch deserves it, dude. Fucking. Anyways, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe because we are posting 2 videos every single day. Peace.